Okay. Oh shit! I fucked up. Let me stop the stream.
All right, we're live a little earlier than expected, but I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so let me just set this to the correct antenna. Damn it, with fellow traveler there. All right, and now I'm gonna go live. Bop, bop. And in 1 second, we should start to get a data feed there. But, how do we prevent communist government? Hold
on. Hey guys, on the on my stream side of things, you guys in the chat, can you just let me know that you can hear everyone in the Discord and you can hear the Discord feedback? Could you guys just let me know real quick? Okay, good. They can hear it. Perfect. All right, ready when you are, sir.
Okay, and I'm ready right here. Yes, hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Load Raid Dio. I'm doing an AMA today with fellow traveler. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a second. Let me just notify people that this is going on right here. So I've got a bunch of good questions that have been asked by our audience. Let me just make sure, good, we're in a good spot where people can hear us and everything's fine. Okay, so this is fellow traveler. He's a YouTuber, communist, and why don't you introduce yourself, friend?
Yeah, so I'm a communist YouTuber. I started doing this about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I make a lot of content pertaining to current events, politics, and economics, of course, from a Marxist-Leninist perspective. Currently, I'm part of the PCUSA, which is an offshoot organization from the CPUSA, more of a returning to your roots type organization, to the original roots of the old American Labor Party or Communist Party. Right now I'm running a campaign, 100 Signs, it's an agitation propaganda campaign. I'm just trying to see how many people will turn out, so I know how many people that I'll be able to organize future events with, as well as give a little practice in organizing as well. But yeah, I'm a communist YouTuber. I browse Discord, I play video games, and I work at FedEx. And I like to work out. That's about all there is to me right now.
The FedEx part is the best part of the whole line right there. Okay, so I'm going to get into the questions. First off, how long do you have for this AMA?
I have about an hour and a half.
Okay, cool. We'll try to fill that up with some pertinent and useful questions very quick. So for the most part, I'm going to try to get to the serious questions first, with some of these joke questions later on.
Get through all the trolls.
Audio is now fixed on our end. Yeah, let's. I mean, you can troll if you want to.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go. First, I just want to ask you off the bat, can you give me the premise of your 100 Signs campaign that you're doing there? What exactly are you doing, and what's your goal for this campaign?
All right, so the 100 Signs campaign is something I started about a week ago. Admittedly slightly into reaction to some drama that I was having with another YouTuber, because I was basically able to get them stonewalled for, I don't even want to get into it, but I was able to get multiple orgs to blacklist this person for reasons I'm not going to get into. And I'm like, okay, so if I'm able to get the org that I'm working for to do it, and orgs that I'm not even working under to do this, I wonder how much influence I have over my own audience. And like, so I wanted to see how many people would turn out to do it. And at the same time, I also wanted to give people an opportunity to practice going out in the real world and talking to people and just spreading propaganda. So first and foremost, it's a propaganda campaign. 2, it's just me flexing my influence. And 3, it's also a way for people who are used to being terminally online to go out and do something, because it's good to get off the internet and actually like do organizing, because our job as communists is to organize working class people.
Stop you real quick. First off, when you say you stonewalled somebody, what exactly do you mean when you say I stonewalled this individual? Like in specific, I'm not familiar with that term.
Oh, well, it's another way of saying canceled, I guess. But basically, I got multiple parties to denounce this person. I got multiple big leftist YouTubers to denounce this person. And what this means is they're not going to work with them, associate with them, or invite them to work with any of their activities. So I basically, because they burned their bridge with me, I decided this person is incredibly toxic and harmful, so I'm going to burn their bridge with multiple other people as well. because
So you blackballed this person,
yeah,
kind of
pretty
like the McCarthy era.
yeah, I put out a burn notice against him more or less, and yeah, I took care of that because this is a person that basically ferments a bunch of bigotry in his server. This is a person who is incredibly toxic and bad faith, and is really just trying to use the cause to they're trying to use the cause to ferment a personality cult around themselves and basically create a parasocial relation for their audience to profit off of. Not to mention they're an insanely unhinged lunatic, and this isn't really a person that we need like representing the cause, because it's just extremely opportunistic and it's not a good look for us. So it's just better if we denounce this person, in all honesty.
So you're getting rid of this motherfucker.
Pretty much,
And,
yeah.
because they're fomenting discord within your Discord. All right, got it.
Yeah, more or less.
All right, so here, one of our first questions here is from $CK Doobie Blue, and he asks, it's a general question, but it's a chance for you to expound a little bit here. So he asks, what are your thoughts on socialism or anarchism, and how do you value state-controlled property?
All right. So socialism is the next necessary step towards communism, because you aren't going to be able to distribute according to need or achieve a stateless, classless, moneyless society off the bat after the revolution. So that's the reason why I'm not an anarchist, because traditional anarchists want to abolish the state outright and go straight into a stateless society and straight into a society without private ownership. But under socialism, it's considered the transitory phase towards communism. So under socialism, all the industry is socialized and turned into public property. They're all treated as public utilities instead of private services. Workers become worker owners within their own individual enterprises, and society, instead of producing according to the ebb and flow of market demand, is instead producing according to a rational plan drafted from the bottom up. And
Okay.
yeah,
Let me ask real quick, just for clarification. When you say a rational plan drafted from the bottom up, I'd like to know a little bit more about what that entails. Are you talking about some kind of collective that's creating a plan for a centralized economy?
yeah.
Is there some other mechanism? So essentially, you envision a collective group of people deciding how much of X shall be produced and how much of Y shall be distributed, etc. Right?
Well, it's according to a general economic plan. Like you would have the plan drafted. When I mean from the bottom up, I mean you take feedback from below and you produce according to a preset, predetermined demands based off the economic plan. And then from there, you calculate how many resources you have, how much labor you're going to need to produce and distribute according to the demand for various like commodities and consumer goods and so on. And that's how the plan is drafted. So rather than having what we have now, where you have firms that are producing according to profitability, and as soon as demand's met and you end up with a overproduction crisis or a business cycle. So that's what leads to layoffs and unemployment. But under socialism, there are no business cycles. There are no booms or busts. Instead, you just produce according to whatever is demanded for various, consumer goods. But you also have means of subsistence set aside for the non-profitable sector as well, as with scientific research, overhauling infrastructure, venture projects that generally aren't profitable or would take decades, if not centuries, to realize return on investment on. Very long-term projects that tend to get put on the back burner within the context of capitalism that we use state planning to build towards anyways. Like we already used state planning for like space exploration and like nuclear power plants and so on. So under socialism, we would just be able to streamline it, and we would also be able to make sure everybody has a job, and everyone would get paid more naturally because you don't have any private owners that are acting as the middleman, basically extracting value out of circulation. So in all, it would be a lot more efficient, no more unemployment, no more poverty. It would be devoid of capitalist class, so people could run their workplaces democratically and decide how things are run for themselves. People could decide how much of their surplus they want to go into their pocket and how much they want dedicated to advancing the economy and so on. People would actually have a say in these sort of things. And of course, you would have like, bureaucrats, you would have planners for like the more complex decision makings from above. But yeah.
All right, let's pause right there. So that's a long answer to that first question, but I think you've stated your view there pretty well. Thank you very much. And let me go to our next. So we're now our moderators are now pinning questions, and there's a bunch of them. So we're going to try to get through these in a relatively short order, but take as much time as you feel is necessary to answer each of these. So Ellen Degeneracy asks, do you believe that China is economically communist? And I'll add, do you believe that they're economically communist now? And do you believe that at any point during their past, they are what you would consider real communism?
No. And there's a couple of reasons why. China, I would classify as a capitalist country with some very hard commands or controls on their markets. They have a very centralized political structure, but it's all done with all business and all commerce, as well as like lobbying and so on, and economic activity is done within the context of the CCP, or the Chinese Communist Party. And just to let you guys know, there's more ideological diversity in the CCP than in the Republican and Democratic parties combined. You've got rightist, leftist, and center elements within it. But I still classify it as capitalist because the fact of the matter is that they do have a capitalist class. They do have landlords. They do operate according to the market and not according to a rational plan. They produce for profit. They act on mainly a for-profit basis. They adhere to the laws of capital, and they are plugged into the global capitalist market. As for will they ever become socialist? I mean, I got to see it to believe it. So far, no country has ever been able to achieve socialism without having a revolution. So in order for true socialism to come to China, it would require another revolution of some kind. Were they ever socialist? I think they were on the way under Mao. They were on the way under Mao, like the kind of in transition to socialism. But it's kind of hard when it comes to like the Mao era, because it's sort of like an in-between phase where they weren't completely socialist, but they weren't completely capitalist yet. It's kind of hard, but the lines become a little blurred, at least during the Mao era.
Okay, so like a follow-up there. If we say that roughly about 50 million people probably starved during the Great Leap Forward and during the other catastrophes that followed during that same era, if you envision some sort of socialist revolution in modern industrialized countries like America and so forth, what level of casualties are you comfortable with during the, I would say, inevitable upheaval as industry and everything is retooled? What level of casualties are you comfortable with in order to achieve your socialist goal?
To be blunt, however many it takes. When it comes to the famine in China, China was a very poor third world country that was colonized a century ago that suffered from cyclical periodic famines throughout the centuries. And while the CCP made a great deal of blunders and mistakes in the Mao era that exasperated the problems and natural disasters that led up to the famine, they ultimately did achieve a lot of goals and learn a lot of things from their first 5-year plan. And the point is that you have a country that used to have famines cyclically for centuries, and then they have one famine at the very start of socialism, and then they never have another famine again, and calorie consumption has been consistently on the rise ever since. But when I say no matter what the cost, I say this because the alternative is capitalist society collapses, and within the wake of the collapse of a capitalist society, or the breakdown of our environments due to the destruction we're doing to the ecosystem, there's going to be a great deal more death and mayhem going down that road than there will be if we have, one strong central government where we get everyone on the same page and we're like, all right, so here's the plan. We're overhauling our infrastructure. We're building a society that's going to raise living standards for everyone. And we're going to get society back on track towards civilization and go beyond capitalism and usher in an era that's better than anything we can possibly imagine. That's the general idea. So
Let's move to our next question here from Hedonism Pepe.
mhm.
And this correlates to our previous question here. He asks, why don't you value things like freedom of speech? You say you're a Maoist. Do you understand the history of China and the oppressive measures the government has taken on people, such as the Great Firewall? And you were just talking about that a little in your question here. And so I'll expound on that a little bit, the same way I did with the previous question. To what degree do you feel comfortable censoring the speech of others in order to attain the goal of capitalism? Do you think it's permissible to censor the speech of those who disagree with you? Do you think it's permissible to hold sort of blanket restrictions? Like essentially, do you feel that the Second Amendment and the First Amendment are dispensable in the service of attaining your goal?
I'd like to leave those intact as much as humanly possible. When it comes to, ideally, we'd like to secure people's rights and make sure that people have, their rights met. I'm not anti-free speech, but historically, the reason why there's been censorship in socialist countries is because these are countries that have been undermined from the outset from larger, more powerful, more wealthy countries. And they had to engage in censorship to some degree to make sure that counter-revolution doesn't get fomented and basically spread. They were countries at siege, more or less. And the reason why we here in the United States and Western Europe enjoy like free speech and all the privileges that we do is because we've had, like, the capitalist countries, the rich capitalist countries, have had centuries of peaceful developments to embed and entrench themselves and secure a position that basically makes it so it's not really necessary to censor people as much, just because there's enough resources to go around, enough wealth to go around to basically keep people from being dissatisfied in that way. But not only that, but I'm going to call bullshit that capitalist countries don't censor people. They censor the fuck out of people all the time, even America. There's this event called the Cold War where basically you could get deported or go to jail or get fired if you were an open communist, like during the Red Scare McCarthyite era. Like, you could get thrown in jail. Some people were even executed. So when it comes to rights, you respect them as much as you can, but when it comes to attaining like the goals of socialism, you respect them to the extent that you can, but then you'll have to make necessary compromises along the way if it means achieving the goal. So am I going to let fascists argue, or am I going to let fascists organize, a counter-revolution under my regime? No. Am I going to let groups of people try to come together to like undermine the government and wreck? No. Because at the end of the day, the needs and the will of the collective and the community as a whole are more important than the individual cynical desires of a few, basically.
Okay. So I just want to point out that in the chat, people are outlining that nobody was directly executed as a result of McCarthyism, which does track with my historical understanding of the sort of Red Scare era and so forth. The only people I'm aware of being executed were literally spies, if you want to believe that they're spies, or people specifically designated enemies of the state by the U.S. government. If you'd like to argue that they were in fact just revolutionaries, it's possible, but I don't believe that anybody was executed as a result of the McCarthy trials.
Well, I'm more referring to the Red Scare era in general. People absolutely were killed by the government during that time for their political beliefs and ideology of the left-wing disposition.
Are you talking about United States citizens or people that we assassinated?
Well, U.S. citizens in general. Yeah, I mean, yes. The answer is more or less yes.
Because it's an absolutely fact that we've multiple documented assassination attempts on Castro and other leaders.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm referring.
We took a couple of shots at Che as well.
Yeah,
so if you want to say that those are executions during that era, we could do that.
Well, no, I wasn't referring specifically to Castro, but there are definitely examples of people like agitators and dissidents during that era that were straight up killed by the United States government.
Can we point to any in specific? Like, I don't want to put you on the spot. Just if you know a name off the top of your head,
I do.
Fantastic. Okay.
Have you guys ever heard of Huey Newton?
I guess this is like oh shit. hold on, let me get to the right spot. I think we've all heard of Huey Newton.
Yeah,
So, do you
yeah.
consider him to be?
He was killed in a
I mean, we
police
get.
raid. They busted
He
into
was
his
definitely
house.
killed in a.
They busted
Yeah, he
into
was
his
definitely
house
killed
and
in
they
a police
shot
raid.
him dead on the spot in the night while he was sleeping. He was the
We
leader
get
of the
some.
Black Panthers Party.
So let's take a look at the death of Huey Newton right here, and I'll get the exact. If can we accept Wikipedia as encyclopedic at the moment right now?
Sure, I prefer not to, but I
Okay.
mean, that's
This is
just
just going to be
because.
for
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Why
simply.
not?
Okay, so the death of Huey Newton, listed on August 22nd, 1989. Newton was murdered in the neighborhood of Lower Bottoms in West Oakland, California. Within days, Tyrone Robinson was arrested as a suspect. He was on parole and admitted the murder to the police, claiming self defense, though police found no evidence Newton was carrying a gun. In 1991, Robinson was convicted of first degree murder and sentenced to 32 years. Robinson stated his motive was to advance in the Black Guerrilla family, a Marxist Leninist narcotics prison gang, in order to get a crack franchise. Uh, so you are then asserting that Tyrone Robinson was acting under the direction of the United States government.
Tyrone Robinson? No. Maybe I got my
So
people mixed
Tyrone
up.
Robinson, yeah, we may be
I
mixed
might
up
not. No,
on
Fred
somebody else
Hampton,
here.
Fred Hampton. I'm not Huey
Fred
Newton.
Hampton.
Yeah,
Okay.
Fred Hampton is who I was talking
All right.
about.
This
Yeah,
this is why we fact check in real time. So let's take a look at
yeah,
the death of Fred Hampton,
sure.
because it didn't sound quite right to me about
Yeah,
Huey.
yeah. I got my
So
people mixed up. I always get those two
let's
mixed up.
see. That's fine. Yeah, I don't. I'm not trying to like got you on that one there. So this one is more interesting right here. So this is a raid organized by the Cook County State's Attorney Edward Harahan. Let's see. He'd been recently strongly criticized by Hampton, who said that Harahan's talk of a war on gangs was rhetoric used to carry out a war on black youth. So heavily armed police went into the site. They went in at like 4 a.m. in the morning. I mean, I don't like. I'm not a huge fan of police popping in early in the morning and just shooting people because they feel like it. Let's see. They stormed into the apartment. The police shot him in the chest, killing him instantly. An alternate account said that Clark answered the door and police immediately shot them. Either way, Clark's gun discharged once into the ceiling. So the single round was fired when he suffered a reflexive death convulsion after being shot. This was the only shot fired by um, the Panthers, and it appeared that at the time he was drugged by barbiturates, which he was sleeping on a mattress in the bedroom with his fiancee. She was forcibly removed from the room while he was dying in bed. Uh, then they fired at the head of the south bedroom. Hampton was wounded in the shoulder by the. Upon discovery, an officer shot him twice in his head and killed him. Dan- um, and fellow Black Panther Harold Bell said he heard the following exchange. That's Fred Hampton. Is he dead? Bring him out. He's barely alive. He'll make it. The injured Panthers say they heard two shots. According to Hampton supporters, the shots were fired point blank at Hampton's head. According to Deborah Johnson, an officer then said, he's good and dead now. Damn. So people in the other chat are alleging that he had a gun pointed at the police.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
does sound like they rolled in and just mopped this character.
Yeah. No,
R.I.P. to Fred Hampton.
no,
But
that no, that's straight up what they did. They straight up assassinated this guy. But I mean, we don't just need to take that into account. I mean, there aren't a lot of examples of people being killed in the United States during the Cold War era. I mean, you can just look at the activities of the CIA. I mean, they've routinely assassinated democratically elected leaders and overthrown like democratic socialists in coups and overthrown foreign governments. I mean, what?
yeah,
I mean, look,
I'm
there's
not
a
going to
great.
defend the CIA.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
no.
not, I'm not getting in that position.
If you'd like a golden example of what I'm talking about, if Wikipedia Wikipedia lists of anti-communist mass killings, and go to the part on Indonesia.
Oh, I'd love to do it. Let's put a pin in that
All
for
right,
later.
that's fine.
As much as I love reading about mass killings,
Sure,
I want to get through a bunch of these questions, and people are very interested to ask you stuff. So
sure.
Mango, who's one of our executive moderators at the, and so is Hedonism Pepe. I should have shout out to both of them. Oh, I think they're just regular lowly moderators. But he asks, have you read Das Kapital? And if so, what did you think about it? And if possible, be brief. Many questions.
All right, so I haven't read all of Capital. I've read a solid half of it. I didn't make it to primitive accumulation, which is kind of okay because from what I understand from primitive accumulation or that section of the book, it's really just a history of like pre-capitalist economic relations. I need to go through his section on primitive accumulation, but all in all, capital is a very good dissection, critique, and analysis of the political economy of the day. I'd say a lot of his theory is still applicable to this day, although there's, of course, a lot. We're in a service economy now. We've kind of moved away from an industrial economy, more or less. So,
They didn't have fucking computers when they were coming
well,
up with
yeah,
this whole thing. Yeah.
absolutely. I'm just saying for the time, it was a very good book, and it's still relevant to this day. It's still got a lot of really good, relevant ideas. They're still pertinent to this day. That's
All
all.
right, cool. Let's pop to Elysium here, who, in the same way that he was asking, one of our previous questions was, do you think that China counts as a legitimate communist government? Let's put it to the same thing. Do you think that the USSR, at any point during its existence, was a solid example of a communist government? And if not, what parallels can we draw from it?
All right. So, no country on earth has achieved communism. That's the end goal.
Mhm.
But yes, they were a communist government, and yes, they were a socialist country. They were a socialist country between the years 1933, 36, around that time, depending on who you ask, 33, 36. I consider socialist construction to have been completed by 33. And they were socialist all the way up until 1987. And the real restoration of capitalism was brought by Gorbachev with his perestroika reform. So between 33 and 87, the Soviet Union was more like 15 socialist countries. Yes.
Yeah, and like basically a confederacy of those socialist countries. So let me ask a follow up to there. If that's, can we agree that that's as close as people have gotten in history to legitimate socialism that's moving in the direction of actual communism? They're like
Yeah.
the most shining example.
Yeah,
During,
they're the first
all right,
example, that's for certain. I mean, there's other examples as well, but yeah.
but I would, if I think I'm not out of school here if I say that they're the best example of people who are taking a legitimate crack at this.
Yeah.
Having been through Russia, having spoken with people in Russia, and knowing that many people from Russia are watching this right now, Russia has consistently been a shithole, miserable, awful place to live, work, and exist during the entirety of that time. Probably, and I wasn't alive, prior to the communist revolution, but it was a pretty shitty place to live through and through, especially by comparison, even in the worst parts of, let's say, the rural South, which is probably the shittiest part of the United States during that time. How do you defend the socialist republic? Are we just going to say that they weren't close enough to their goal, or
No.
that these were growing pains?
No,
It was just a pretty shitty situation. What was going down?
No. So when I look at a country, I try not to compare its conditions to modern first world countries that have had every advantage of the note. I try to look at these countries looking where they started, which was feudalist, czarist, hell's shithole, and I look at where they go from there. All right. So when I look at the Soviet Union as an experiment, they came from an incredibly backward and undeveloped point that was largely unelectrified, largely unindustrialized. And they went from being this backwards agrarian peasant backwater to the world's number 2 superpower. They were an industrial superpower 2 decades later. And at the same time, being the first nation to be spacefaring, get people in outer space, build some of the world's first nuclear power plants, make massive contributions to the realm of human knowledge scientifically, and taking what was otherwise like a terrible place to live and providing their people with a decently respectable way of life. Now, was it first world living standards? No, it was second world. But the point of the matter is that these people went from living like animals out in peasant villages to having a decently respectable way of life by the 1950s, while saving the world from fascist terror, mind you. They endured great, massive, grievous losses in World War II, and they were still...
It's some incredible...
Yeah,
Stalingrad and so
yeah,
forth, amazing right there.
Yeah, you have this country.
Suffering.
They were able to come through all of that against all odds, being sieged from all sides with less resources, coming from a much more backward starting point, and they were still able to build something relatively incredible with respect to where they started. And when I look at the Soviet Union, I don't like to compare them to America. It's more fair to compare them to India or Brazil or other parts of the world from similar starting points of similar times. If capitalism is so great and socialism sucks and doesn't work, then where is their major economic industrial booms? Where's India? Where's Brazil? Where's Indonesia? You know,
I want to make a
see what I'm saying?
counterpoint there. When we talk about Brazil and Indonesia, and specifically in the case of India, it's the same way that you were saying earlier that it's unfair to compare countries to other countries and with different starting points. I want to make very clear to people who are students of history that you cannot compare uh, countries that are in subtropical regions, which have a completely different scale of endemic disease, where the difficulty of sustaining caloric input and the protein availability, they're not even in the same ballpark there. So I'm not trying to make excuses for India and for Brazil, but the challenges of industrializing a country in a subtropical environment and one that's in a more, and granted, like Russia has some significant difficulties on the other end of the aspect,
It's
very cold winters and so
most
forth.
of yeah,
But
most of it's a snowy tundra. Like, go on.
but like throughout human history, like very very difficult times had by people trying to industrialize in places like India, where the climate is just fucking miserable and hot. Similarly, in Brazil, they face a lot of challenges that places with more temperate climates, and places that have harder winters that get rid of more disease in general. Like those are enormous assets in the process. So I don't want to
Well,
sleep
sure.
on the role that climate
Yeah,
plays.
yeah.
Let me talk to our next question.
Climate plays a role, but let me just interject with this. But the way
Sure.
the way your political economy is organized also plays a role as well. If you have a political economy geared toward perpetuating a king, where people don't have legal equality, then in general, every study of the note shows this, by the way, but monarchies on average are way less wealthy and way less developed than democracies on average. But so there's a certain political and legal parameters as well as economic organization that permits like growth and development in the first place. So I would also argue that as well. But go on.
Okay. And I want to, this is just a side note that I'm seeing in the alternate chat there, but Anti Pelota said that Marx hoped that revolution would happen in Germany because there would be less catching up. So even in his, I do believe that. Even in his original game plan, he was hoping that he would have a better starting point than Russia. Fucking nobody wants to.
No, like Marx thought the revolution was going to be in Germany because Germany basically met all of the check marks for what he was expecting for where the revolution was going to come. But instead, it was the parts of the world that were left behind. It was the colonized and the backward and oppressed nations, which were the ones that ended up going socialist.
Okay. So Limitesi, and I hope these are nicknames, but the guy with Hobbes, and shout outs to Hobbes right there in his avatar. Limitesi says, do you think that due to the existence of Bitcoin and other decentralized currency, and it's unclear exactly what he's saying with his question here, but like there are a few ways that we can interpret this. He says, do you think that due to existence of Bitcoin and other decentralized currency will create a pseudo economy in order to avoid communism, socialism? So there's some verb confusion there. It's not clear if he thinks that people will use Bitcoins to avert socialism, possibly by avoiding taxation and so forth, or if he thinks that cryptologic currency could be used as a service of socialism. What do you think? You can interpret.
All right. So first thing I want to say about cryptocurrency is it will never, ever replace fiat money. I just want to state that right now. Fiat money has a number of advantages over crypto. You've got, on one hand, fiat money, which can inflate, which can expand, and which can stimulate circulation of commodities. And on the other hand, you have crypto, which is just a stock that people speculate and invest on. And the whole point of a currency is to spend it, not to speculate on its value necessarily. So it will never be a replacement for fiat currency. But with that being said, I don't really necessarily know how crypto could undermine socialism, maybe like through the creation of black markets and so on. But
I think that's what he's arguing.
Yeah,
Because he says he talks about a pseudo economy. So
yeah,
he
like
essentially,
a
do you
second
see this as a
economy.
danger to the establishment of functioning socialist countries? Just people sort of foregoing the actual currency so that they can invest in crypto.
Well, I mean, what would they be investing with? Like just regular dollars? Because in my model of socialism, money would be abolished and replaced with a labor voucher system, and you wouldn't be able to circulate vouchers. So I don't know how they'd even be able to invest that in the first place. Good fucking luck. You'd basically have to set up a second economy altogether. Which, I mean,
Okay.
sure. I mean, I guess it's a hell of a project that you'd have to undertake, but I
There's kind
mean,
of a second economy in Bitcoin happening right now. I mean,
yeah.
it's much smaller, but there's definitely a fair amount going on worldwide.
Can I
People are using this as a tool against some exploitive regimes, such
can
as the IRS.
Can
Yes.
I respond to this Sam Howinzer real quick? This
Where is
person
what did he say?
he
Yeah,
says
can you read his exact comment?
he says the USSR had an extreme amount of support from the United States during World War II. Wrong. The Marshall Plan was not active until 1942, at which point the
Mhm.
Soviets were already winning the war against the Germans. So just throwing that out there. You can put that in your pipe and smoke it. But moving on.
Okay. Let's go to the so let's pop to the next one right quick. So this is a from Crystal Metheny right here. Opinion on Vaush, and you can be as dirty as you want. Go for it.
I fucking hate Vosh, dude. There's nobody
Worry
that
about it.
I've ever seen bastardize and vulgarize Marxist theory as well as socialism more than Vosh. Someone who pollutes the discourse and postures as being a radical while shilling for Joe fucking Biden and the Democratic establishment. Dude
Okay.
literally makes me vomit and puke in my soup. And there's a
Well, thank
reason.
you for being succinct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's all I
and
needed right there.
and
All
and
right,
like
so
I'm
let's get to our next one from Raka right here. Raka would like your thoughts on anarcho-communism.
uh it's another utopian trend on my that I see so far. You can't just go straight from a stateless society when you have a revolution, because that's the whole premise. You abolish the state and you go straight into stateless communism. Uh, Not only in theory does it make any sense because you need a state to keep everyone in line and keep the whole plan together and make sure people adhere to the plan, but you also need a state to protect the revolution. You need a state to protect from imperialism if you're a smaller nation and there are still imperialist countries, because there isn't one socialist country that hasn't been relentlessly fucked with by the West in general. But anyways, yeah, shoot, I just had a brain fart. Could you repeat that question for me real quick?
No, I think you answered it as much as we need to
Yeah.
at the moment, which is just an idea that you find it implausible that
Yeah, well, not
anarcho-communism can work
yeah, but
because
not
essentially socialism isn't something people would do if they weren't forced to.
yeah, but not only that, but it wouldn't that not only that, but it's already been tried and it didn't work, or at least within the context of Lenin's day. They tried to do that where they, like, before war communism, they tried to like wither away the state rapidly and have everyone just do their own local communal decentralized planning, and it didn't work. It was an economic disaster. Like,
Mhm.
unfortunately, given their circumstances, yeah, you need to get everyone on the same page and adhering to the same general economic plan. You can't have some people that are privatizing their factories over here or a group over here that's ignoring grain production quotas when, you know, you've got a civil war going on and you've got the chaos going around you trying to reorganize society. Like, it's just, it's utopian. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay. So our next question comes from Stefan.exe, who may or may not have been banned after asking this question. I don't know what that grade nickname means here, but it's a good question. So he says, my grandparents lived under Enver Hoxha, and life was awful and hard.
I can
How would you
believe it.
change people? How would you change people's minds on communism when, for the most part, their regimes were filled with brutality?
Yeah. I don't really think if let's in a hypothetical where say a country like America had socialism, I don't really think the same level of coercion would really be necessary to get people in. I mean, I think to an extent you would need it, but I mean, the real answer is, I mean, to some extent you're always going to have coercion because there's always going to be people that are trying to do something for themselves at the expense of the group, and we're trying to like get everyone in on the same page so that we can work towards a common goal is the general idea. And I will not defend Enver Hoxha. I don't really think Hoxha was a very good leader. He was sort of isolated his country from the rest of the world and basically bankrupted it building bunkers and silos. But otherwise, Hoxha's Albania did enjoy the benefits of socialism in the sense that they did modernize rather quickly, coming from an incredibly patriarchal peasant background. But beyond that, Hoxha did more harm than good in the long run. I wouldn't really call myself a Hoxha stan, if that makes sense.
Can we just agree that silos and bunkers and machine gun emplacements are cool, though?
They are. No, bankrupting.
I do like machine gun emplacements.
Yeah,
as many as possible.
Bankrupting your own country so that you can build 40,000 bunkers is fucking awesome. I'm not gonna lie. Best mistake ever.
You like that idea?
Best.
All right. What do we got here? So let's. We got the opinion on Vaush. Thank you to Stefan.exe there. So Assad fan asks a very pertinent question. What exactly happens to the bourgeoisie after the revolution? Are there any left?
Well, couple things happen. Historically, the ruling class has never given up their wealth and power peacefully. So obviously there'd be a civil war of some kind. But then afterwards, you give these people an option. You can willfully give up your capital and go back to descending into the ranks of the proletariat, and you just become a regular working class person working like everyone else. You know, you don't have any penalties levied against you for this. Alternatively, if they continue to resist and they continue to frustrate and do counter-revolution, not really much you can do with these people besides imprison them or sentence them to summary liquidation.
So gulags is the answer.
I'm not really big on forced labor. Not unless it's absolutely
in the work.
Yeah, I mean, not unless it's absolutely necessary. But in times of desperation. When I mean summary liquidation, I'm referring to executions, not like gulag.
Okay, so on the topic of gulags, we just got a question from Stratum, who says, knowing that there's millions in U.S. prisons outpacing the population of the gulag system, even at its height, would you say that the United States is more oppressive than the USSR, given that we have similar forced labor here?
Yeah,
not quite on like the day of the knife of Ivan Denisovich here, but we do have a lot more prisons than them.
Yeah, no, we have way
and
more,
a larger population. Yeah,
we have a larger population, but we have more prisoners per capita. It's kind of a hard thing to gauge. I think in some regards, America is more oppressive and more free, but the Soviets were more oppressive and more free in other ways. I mean, in general, if you were just a regular working person and you just worked your job, I mean, you're not gonna, it's not like thought crime or thought police. A lot of the people that were here's something I'm gonna say. The vast majority of people that went to the gulags were not political prisoners. These were people that were guilty of genuine crimes, robbery, murder, etc. The vast majority of gulag prisoners were not.
Solzhenitsyn? Are we calling Solzhenitsyn a murderer or a criminal?
No. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say about Solzhenitsyn. Throw everything you know about that man out the window. He's an anti-communist.
I'd like to not because I'm a big fan of Solzhenitsyn.
So here's the issue with him. He deliberately lied and spread a lot of bullshit about the Soviets, and he got paid to do it. That's the other thing. And not only that, but he says his life in the gulag. I'm sure he had a very rough life and so on. But the thing is that
are we about to downplay his life in the gulag?
No, I'm not trying to downplay. I'm not trying to downplay his life. But here's what I'm going to say. Just to let you guys know, they saved him from cancer in that gulag. So they saved his life. Just throwing that out there.
Do you think it's possible that had his immune system not been compromised by decades of backbreaking labor, potentially he would have been in a better position to fight off the cancer in the first place?
Decades of labor. He wasn't in the gulag for decades.
Decades is that's an exaggeration.
No, the maximum.
I just felt like saying decades.
But maximum sentences didn't go beyond 10 years. But what I will say about
one of the points that he alleges in A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, like one of the final points of the book is that the character had been there, and granted, this is fiction, right? But he's alleging that that people were indeed kept there longer than 10 years. Whether they, it's one of the core points of the book. So
That people were kept there longer than
this
10
is
years.
yeah, they were kept much longer, and they had no recourse. So if somebody's a good worker, why wouldn't you keep them for as long as you could? There wasn't a great deal of accountability at the time. Let
Yeah,
me go into Shorty's question here. So Shorty femboy foot soldier had is asking a question that you've already covered a little bit here, but I want to get to the second part of their question. He says, "Hi, I'm an anarchist, and I wish to know your thoughts on us ancoms and also syndicalists, which you've talked about a little bit here." The part of the question that's interesting to me is, would you work with and support anarchism if the conditions are right? And here, if the conditions are right, do you to what extent I think an interesting question here is, to what extent are you willing to work with and collaborate with anarchists in service of your goals, and at what point are you willing to break with anarchists?
all right, so I'm a very big tactical unity kind of guy. You work with people to the point to where you can fulfill all your common goals, and then you struggle with them on the goals which are conflicting, like the contradictions and so on. And this is the same philosophy that I hold no matter who I'm working with. I mean, I hold this with liberals and even right-wingers that I've worked with in the past. I'll work with you until we fulfill that common goal, but then I'm going to continue to fight for my goals. And if your goals contradict mine, then yeah, we're going to struggle on those goals. But otherwise, I'm your ally until I'm not, more or less. But I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. So
But earlier, like, just to have some clarity and continuity here, earlier you said that there was no upper limit to the number of people that you would be willing to dispense with in service of your goal. And at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about essentially getting like blackballing somebody there. So from the take me as a position, say that I'm an anarcho-syndicalist, aren't I going to be a little bit worried about working with you if your stated goal is that ultimately any number of people are dispensable in the service of attaining your goal, where like essentially nothing is off the table? Oh,
yeah, I would consider it more of a minimum necessary than anything else. But yeah, the issue is that the differences in our goals are so far off. Like, we just have a different vision of socialism. They have a stateless society, and we have a society with the state. So obviously, we do revolution, and then we can infight, and then we can worry about it. I'm not saying like
no.
I
Does
don't
that
want to.
sound like
I don't want
if
to
they're
kill
undergoing?
anarchists.
Well, I want to let's take a beautiful dream world where the revolution occurs and it happens. Say at the end of it that the two of you have fought arm in arm as brothers, right? If you receive the end where there are some people who want to have state control of everything vis-a-vis your ideal communist society, and another group of people, a faction, says no, we don't want to have any state control. Well, essentially, I mean, that's not even a fair fight. You guys would just mop the fucking floor with them. You have central control. You're going to be better situated. Just the massive organizational advantage of being a sort of top-down, relatively brutal. I mean, the anarchists are going to be first against the wall once we get to that situation. So I can see the willingness of communists to collaborate with anarchists for temporal gains and so forth. I just don't know why the anarchists would ever do so, knowing that as soon as the communist goal precludes the anarchist goal, and those two goals will never meet. So
Yeah,
essentially,
no. So I think it. I don't necessarily think that would necessarily be the outcome. I think there's some sort of compromise that could be reached with anarchists. I mean, unfortunately, it would have to be done within the context of a state, because the whole point of a state is that it's who has the legitimate use of violence, like whose violence is legit. And I mean, underpinning like politics is violence at the end of the day. That's what all this basically comes down to. I don't know. I try and struggle and reach compromises before I do anything like that. I mean, the only time I would basically crush someone is if like they're actively trying to hinder or get in the way of like a general plan. The whole
and
point.
you don't think that like once you reach the point where you're seeking ideological clarity, you don't think that once you've eliminated other opposition that anarchists won't be an impediment to your progress, they'll be a huge problem. They got to go. Like they're. I don't know if you've ever been in a social group or something like that where you kick out like the one person who's always causing problems, like that one shitty person. Like you got the one
Yeah.
loser in your channel that's always trolling and so forth, and you kick that person out. Well, what happens? Like is everything peachy after that? No, somebody else rises to become the nail that sticks out, and the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Yeah, it's just like if you change that sort of window of what's acceptable, it will become ideologically narrower and narrower. I don't see a happy
All
ending
right,
for
so
the
I want to
collaborators.
I want to reframe things a little bit because I mean you've described my position and my idea as basically being brutal when I would say
Mhm.
that working under a corporation like Amazon or for the super profits of Wall Street or for any other mega corporation or bank and
Mhm.
fulfilling their will and their central plan, which is to gain profits for a minority of oligarchs, I would say that is no less brutal than when the Soviets are trying to modernize their country and basically,
I won't disagree with you. I will
yeah.
admit that point. However,
So there's some degree.
in order to
What I'm
tradition, in
okay.
order to
I'm just
transition from one, sorry, let me let you finish. I
all
want to
right.
apologize for talking over you there. Please finish.
All I'm going to say is that there is going to be coercion no matter what, and I'd rather that coercion and that repression and oppression be on the side of the will of the majority, the will of the people, than the will of a minority that just seeks to enrich themselves at the expense of others. That's all.
Yeah, sorry for talking over you there.
No,
Did
it's
not.
okay.
Yeah, it was
You're good.
non-linear. Okay, so I just for clarity's sake, I want to point out that the next question here, 125 something or other, Vac Studio, asks, bans on record. Was the USSR actually a communist country? That was covered a little bit earlier, so I want to move over a little bit to the next question. Can you reshare your screen there? That'll fix a issue there.
Oh, sorry.
He asked, "Can you name a country?" Just however you had it a second before. I can also
Oh, I
reboot. Yeah,
gotcha.
there we go. Yeah, that just puts you back on my screen. Thank you. Um, so, Beef Jerky Studio asks a question: Can you name a country where communism actually worked? And you already went over that,
It
and have
worked.
said that yeah,
Okay,
there's
so
no true communism.
I
So
can
these are questions that I'm just skipping over because
well,
I think
what
you've covered
I
them.
know what
But
they
if you want to
mean.
get into it, you can. Yeah.
I know what they mean. No country has ever achieved a stateless, classless, moneyless society. That's communism. They have, however, achieved socialism. And has socialism worked? It's worked in virtually every country that it's been implemented in. And it worked, and it did massively improve and secure living standards and workplace democracy for a lot of people. And it did do a lot of good while it was here. You didn't even see like a collapse in global like average hours worked per week until the Bolshevik Revolution. I mean, I wish I had this statistic. I wish for the love of God, I saved this statistic. But before the Bolshevik Revolution, average work weeks globally were like 60 to 70 hours. That
I don't
collapsed.
think anybody seriously is going to argue with
Yeah,
you that socialism has made life better for a number of workers, and I think we can get into trouble there when we're conflating policies that are socialism with socialism in its entirety. Most anybody, I just feel like the word socialism can be used as a significant divider, and just about every citizen of the United States has numerous socialist policies that they're benefiting from. I don't think we'll get to anywhere particularly interesting down the path.
fair enough.
Um, let's let's go to. So this is an interesting question from Nonstop Link right here, and it's one that I would love to hear your answer about. Nonstop Link says, "How can you stop corruption in a communist government?" And if you have any specific proposals or examples of places where they've been able to check some of the inherent corruption that seems to manifest in just about any socialist structure that we've assembled thus far. And I'd like to sidestep the argument. We can accept that capitalism is inherently corrupt,
Yeah, I
and
wasn't even going to
is
touch
not
that.
necessarily better.
I wasn't
Yeah,
even going to touch that. I don't need to.
yeah.
This is like saying, this is sort of like asking, how do we stop people from murdering, or how do we stop people from stealing? Because the whole point is people are engaging in an aberrant behavior of some kind, an undesirable, antisocial behavior. That's wrong. All right. So the way that you deal with it is you have to engineer an environment of some kind, or tailor an environment where people aren't incentivized to engage in undesirable behavior in the first place on one hand, while on the other hand, having penalties for people who do. And that's kind of the whole goal of having a society and civilization. So, I mean, I have some answers to it. I would say you could have like accountability bureaus of some kind where people are just chosen at random to audit like people, like bureaucrats or planners. There's no extra merit or money that comes with being a bureaucrat or a planner. You're just a worker like everybody else. And the other thing is, I would also say, like, the way that you put people in power and authority as well. One thing I'm in favor of is, are you familiar with sortition democracy?
No, why don't you explain it
Yeah.
for us?
So, sortition democracy is when you have pools of eligible candidates for a given position, and you choose people at random from that pool to that position. Nobody's voted in; they're chosen at random from predetermined pools of qualified
Yeah, there are a
officials.
few science fiction stories along this. Has that ever been? And it's an interesting question, and like it immediately draws my interest because of the idea that anybody who is seeking power is probably not somebody you would want to have power. So it seems like that's an attempt to sidestep that. Has that ever been implemented outside of like a small scale trial?
Uh,
It's an interesting
out,
idea. I
out,
just wonder if it's ever been
out,
tried.
outside of ancient Greece,
Mhm.
I think there's trials and examples of it. Like they've had trials, but on a civilizational scale, I'm not really necessarily sure. But I mean,
I don't think I don't think it's fair to like require a civilizational scale trial to like discuss whether an idea is good or not. I don't want to outline this idea.
yeah,
So I do think that's an interesting concept
yeah.
of
So
essentially randomizing leadership from an eligible pool. What do you think would what do you think would hold on who is it? Just a real quick, a lemo. No, they're not off. The alert box was behind this character. I will shout out to anybody who donated in a second there. Um, so yeah, that's anyhow a fascinating idea that I did not expect. So super cool. Um, let's move up a little bit if we can, because just questions popping all the time. Let's see. Uh, so apparently, according to communism, today is Marx's 138th death anniversary. This is a very good time for us to have this discussion. Um, he asks, "How are you mourning?" Although I don't think that you're likely mourning there. You could expand that out to be, "What does Marx mean to you, and what do you wish people knew about his legacy that they might not?"
Karl Marx is one of the most important philosophers and political thinkers of the entirety of the 18th slash 19th. Well, yeah, I would say 18th century, right? Or 17th century? Because I know you subtract one, right? Well,
Yeah,
point is,
my brain is not working on that
yeah,
right now.
that's fine. He's one of the most important thinkers of our time, in recent years. All right, his works have influenced countless revolutionaries, countless politicians, thinkers, and he is, for all intents and purposes, the founding father of sociology, or one of the founding fathers of sociology, anyways. So there's a lot of important stuff that is found within his works, and he has influenced countless people, including myself. He's a very important figure, and I hold Karl Marx and Frederick Engels to a very high regard.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering his question there. So I'm going to skip over Assad fan. It's an interesting question, but I want everybody to get a, chance in here. Um, this is not an interesting. So Aldi Com asked, "Do you think Nazi Germany was a socialist country or a capitalist one?" We're gonna skip over your question, but essentially they were largely. This is just an encyclopedic answer that they were a fascist dictatorship with some significant initial socialist precepts that just became a wartime thing. And if you don't agree with that, you can hop in. But and
Wait,
anything that I can just answer off the top of my
wait,
head,
wait, which
I
country
know
are
it's
we
get
talking?
passed.
Which country are we
He's talking
talking?
about Nazi. He's just
Yeah.
asking, was Nazi Germany socialist? Um,
Oh,
yeah, it's. I don't.
no.
I don't think it's fair to compare them to the type
Yeah.
of socialism we're
No,
talking
no,
about here.
no, no.
Um,
I can answer this.
yeah.
Nazi Germany was not socialist. They were capitalist, more specifically fascist. No, there's still private property in Nazi Germany. They still operated according to profitability. They just had a Keynesian war economy. It was war Keynesianism uh, with a Bonapartic political structure, so to speak.
Mhm.
And for those of you who know what Bonapartism is, you know what I'm talking about. But fascism is basically a type of Bonapartism, more or
Yep.
less.
Short guy, little dick causes problems.
Exactly.
Let's get to another one here. Does communism want to break up the nuclear family? And because this is like a fairly flat question in itself, can we expand that to are there social norms that you think will be dispensed with under communism in terms of like the family structure?
No. The family is a natural institution that's very important to the development of a human being. In fact, Marx and Engels, is more specifically in Origins of the Family, he talks about how like modern capitalist society has really isolated and atomized families, and now you have the husband and the wife and the kids, and in the same way that the capitalist has the workers as his property in a sense, while they're commanding their labor. In a sense, through the organization or institution of marriage, marriage itself has also become property relations in itself historically, not so much today. It's not that the family will go away, it's just what we think of the family will grow to incorporate more than the nuclear family. It'll be more like the extended family where you got uncles and aunties and nieces, nephews, and so on. The family will grow to encompass more people rather than everyone being these pockets living with their picket fences. It's going to be a lot more
Okay, so
communal.
that's what you're describing there is the nuclear family.
I'm,
So his question was, will communism attempt to do away with the nuclear family? So when you say you're going to extend the family structure, maybe because everybody has to live in one house by state fiat, maybe just because of pressures causing people to be more tightly integrated, you are talking about eliminating that structure and replacing it with a
well,
more traditional multi-family home structure,
well,
correct?
I wouldn't. I'm not talking about forcing people to live in the same house necessarily. Everyone.
Which is like, to be fair, like a great deal of that went down in the first in the Russian Revolution. A lot of that
Yeah,
happened.
I'm more referring to the relations, the familial relations that we know now that have formed within the context of capitalist society will change. And like I said, things will just become more communal over time. There's no need to coerce anything. People will come to their own conclusions, and family will mean what it does to people now. And of course, within socialism, what we understand culturally will the birthmarks will still be stamped culturally into socialism, but I don't believe in forcing people to live together or forcibly dissolving the nuclear family. No, not at all.
Okay.
I just think it should
Because
become more communal
in
over time.
general, the trend, and I may be off base here. I have not done the research here, but as access to social services um, and the general amount of welfare that somebody receives, there's less and less of a chance that they will be in a stable nuclear family as availability, sort of public largesse increases. There's less incentive for people to stay together when they don't want to be together, and they wind up atomizing. But
Bye bye.
Okay, and I'm
what was
glad
that?
that
Oh, you're out. What was that?
someone was talking. Someone, the million
Okay.
people in this chat, but
Oh,
and
that's fine.
that's a very interesting point that you brought up.
Mhm.
How basically when people have an alternative to staying together, when they have
Mhm.
the alternative to split, they'll split. I think
Mhm.
there's more going on beyond like access to social services and so on. I would say that a lot of it comes down to like the individualistic culture of our civilization as well. There's not really a lot as much incentive to hold people together like there used to be. Because within the context of the nuclear family, you had a unit, right? There was social cohesion and mobility. But as society basically goes deeper and deeper down in neoliberalism as we know it today, as everything basically gets ever more commodified. People basically become more atomized, individualized consumers, ever more and ever more. And I think there are ways that this trend can be reversed, but I wouldn't necessarily conflate social security or welfare with socialism, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Let's go to. I'm going to take one that caught my eye real quick. Sorry for breaking the order here. So Aldicom asks, who has significant Russian in his name right here. He wants to know thoughts on the Holodomor. Did it happen, and was it a genocide?
Okay, so what you were referring to is the Soviet famine of 1932. It's another case with like the Great Leap Forward, where it's a famine-prone region that has suffered cyclical famines for centuries. And I will concede that the Soviet government did seriously fuck up when it came to how to handle it and plan it. There was a bit of economic gambling and a lot of mistakes and blunders that went on, but I wouldn't classify it as a genocide or a deliberate terror famine. There's really no evidence of that. The Holodomor is actually a fascist conspiracy theory, and there's a great book about it called Fascism, Famine, and Fraud. Like, the original idea behind it was from this journalist. I don't remember his name, but he basically took pictures of the 22 Volga famine and tried to conflate that with like what was going on in the 1930s. He was saying a bunch of different stuff. I mean, to this day, Ukrainian nationalists will use this as a point, like, against like Russia and Sovietism or socialism in general, but more like Russia in general, like anti-Russia sentiments. But otherwise, no, it was just a famine. It wasn't a deliberate genocide famine. That would be a fascist conspiracy theory.
Okay. So this is an interesting question from Sun A here. Sun A asks, do you believe America is on a path towards civil war? And let me just, on an atom, do you think that this would be a positive thing or a negative thing if we were to have a second civil war, part 2, the electric boogaloo?
All right, so I don't think we're on our way to civil war, but I do think we are on our way to a lot more social upheaval and terrorism. I actually think in the short term, you're going to see a lot more spouts of terrorism and protesting and more rioting, similar to the BLM protests. But I'm talking more specific terrorism, like acts of, car bombs and assassinations and so on.
Are we talking about like Oklahoma City level bombings? Because we just had that weird bombing in was it Kentucky where they blew up the AT&T building or some dumb shit like that?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. More domestic terrorism and more isolated pockets, maybe some shootouts in the streets. But
I think it was Nashville. I'm sorry. Yeah.
But like a full-on civil war, I think we're a little bit further out from that. Do I think it would be a good thing? I mean, the collapse of the Great Satan would overall be a very progressive thing for humanity as a species. So, I mean, from that perspective, it would be. But do I think it's a good thing for the American people? No, because a lot of people are going to die.
Well, I want to like a little bit contrast that point. Like, somebody might argue that for essentially since 1945, well, we've had some global upheaval. For essentially looking at about almost an 80-year period at this point, we've been living under kind of nuclear-enforced Pax Americana. We haven't had any of the giant global conflagrations that preceded it, and in general, it seems like we have significantly more peace as a consequence of America's sort of ascension to the nuclear bully of the world.
Yep, so, the petrodollar is a hell of a drug.
Yeah. Does do. I mean, it's not. There hasn't been World War III yet. Nope. Speaking about World War III, and our last question was about the nuclear family and so forth. What's your view on nuclear weapons? How do you feel about them? Good, bad, whack?
They're good insofar as they have brought World War III technically already happened if you think about it, but to the extent that they've kind of deterred nations from fighting one another, I mean, that's good. But I think the scary and dangerous part about it is there's going to come a point where great powers get desperate enough to where they might just have that option on the table. And I mean, for some
India
people,
and Pakistan every single day.
And that's what scares me, because we've had industrialized, like, killing machines unleashed on one another historically, we know what total war is. Total war was not possible until the industrial age. So when I see World War I, World War II, I see total war. Do we have total war today? No. But
Not yet.
when we see total war between two modern first world countries, say America and China, or like America and Iran, that is going to be a very, very scary day for the world.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Iran while we're there. Do you think they have the right to nuclear armaments?
Yeah, I do. Because every other country on the earth does, and they all have deterrence. If Iran had their own nuclear warheads, then they would be able to deter aggressive activity on behalf of the United States. Because, I mean, look at what America did to Gaddafi in Libya. Like, Gaddafi gave up his nukes, and then we just went in there and bombed him anyways. Like, so if Iran gives up nukes, and unfortunately, they are allies with China. So if we were to go in there and mess with Iran, then it's going to pull China and Russia into the mix. So you've got that as a deterrent. But yeah, no, Iran, just like any other country, has a right to have nuclear warheads. And mind you, there's only been one country on Earth that actually has used nuclear warheads, and it's not Iran.
Chad America.
Exactly.
Okay, so Croc, he has a voice chat question. Croc, are you here with us? Let me see. Hold on, let me unmute Croc right quick. So Croc, are you with us? Can you hear me? I cannot hear him. There you are. Yeah, Croc, did you want to ask your question real quick?
Yeah, I've got a question. You're a fucking idiot.
Well, that's not a question. And
Yeah,
if
that's
you
not a
weren't
question.
Fucking idiot.
Yeah, that's not a
Wait,
question.
which one of us is the idiot? Are we both idiots, or is it me?
I think he's referring to me.
What do you think is the idiot?
Why are you so quiet?
His voice is really low. It's hard to
Yeah,
hear.
he's quiet. I can't hear what he's saying.
Here, I'm gonna turn up his volume on my end. Here, say it a little bit louder, please.
You are a fucking idiot, is what I'm saying.
All right, thank you. All
All
right,
right.
yeah, he just meant that I'm the idiot. Okay, well, thank you for your input. Good job. I think it's fair. Yeah, I made like numerous grievous mistakes during this AMA that, like, God, I mispronounced some dumb shit and so forth. So it's totally fair. I'm a fucking retard.
My biggest
So,
the thing is that it's all relative. He's right. I am a fucking idiot in comparison to people that are geniuses and smarter than me. So he's got a point.
Okay. So his actual question that he put there was, in your Maoist regime, would you make any changes from China's Maoism? And I think this is actually, so you're espousing a platform of sort of modern Marxism. What, if you could name like one or two things that would distinguish you from the Maoist era that you think are important?
That's kind of a tough one because I don't exactly classify myself as a Maoist.
Okay. A few people have said that. Do you want to take a second to just say what particular kind of communism you subscribe to? What do you like, down with Trotsky?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ML, but I do have like Maoist leanings. I'm a bit of a crypto Maoist, but I haven't really read the literature, so I wouldn't classify myself as a Maoist. I just
Do you
agree.
feel qualified to get in on this question about what you think should be done differently from the, like, if you could go back in time? Outside of like the obvious hindsight.
I know
like,
I know one thing I would do. I wouldn't kill all the fucking sparrows, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, man, it's bad luck to kill a fucking bird. I'm just putting it out there. All right. So I'm just gonna go over Beef Jerky Studio. As Senator Martin KG asked if he would call Norway or Denmark socialist, they're capitalist countries.
No.
Let's see. So Elysium has kind of an interesting question here. He says, what's your take on the artificial demand that communism tries to create instead of natural demand dictated through advertisement and the free market?
Natural demand.
Unless that's, the natural really sticks out at me. Maybe that's like a accepted economic term.
Excuse me. Advertising now takes more money than the production of the products themselves. Advertising is like the #1 overhead cost for like any company on earth. So for you to sit here and say that like it's a natural demand doesn't make sense to me. People are literally brainwashed every day to buy stupid bullshit that they don't need, as well as manufacturing inferior consumer goods that will break, so people are forced to go out and buy the new iteration of a product. So if anything, communism would solve that problem, not create it.
Well, because you wouldn't have like any of that cool shit.
Yeah, you'd have distribution according to need, but you'd have goods that are produced that last, goods that can, that are serviceable. This way, instead of buying a new smartphone every other year, you'd be given the ultimate smartphone that's like up to date and can be updated and upgraded and so on, rather than just tossing it out every other year in favor of a new iteration with slight tweaks here and there, basically.
I want to just ask you real quick. Have you ever driven in a car that was made by the Russians?
The reason why Soviet
So
the reason why Soviet vehicles
these are real fucking shit heaps. If you
Yeah, no, Soviet cars sucked, but I can tell you why they sucked. The reason why Soviet cars sucked is because they had a heavy emphasis on public transportation and getting everyone where they needed to be efficiently, and they didn't really like prioritize making luxury cars for people that people would enjoy driving on an individual basis, but people wanted cars and they just didn't make very good cars. They had very nice buses apparently, but yeah, no, Soviet cars definitely sucked.
Okay. So let's see here. So I'm going to take a look for another VC question. If you, let me see. No, I don't see him in the chat there, so I can't take it in VC. Let's, if you, Sam Howenzer says, if you actively criticize the United States for crimes, I want to know what you think of the USSR's crimes. I don't think that this is specific or productive enough. Let's move on. A few people have asked me what your personal views are on gun control, and I want to expand this a little bit. Do you currently own a firearm? How many do you think that everyone in America should own a firearm? And if not, who do you think should be allowed to have firearms?
All right, so I'm actually very pro-gun. I'm very, very pro-gun. I'm pretty big on the Second Amendment, and I would say not only do I believe firearms should be legal, I also believe that in the case of an invasion of the country, you would have silos where firearms could be distributed according to need, and you could get the entire populace armed against an invading force. But otherwise, I'm very pro-gun. I've got myself a Glock that I like to take to the range and shoot from time to time. It's a Glock 30, I believe. You need an armed working class to overthrow the government, and you need an armed working class to protect the revolution afterwards. So yeah, I'm very pro-gun.
So I've got a voice question from Assad fan here. Assad fan, do you want to ask your question?
All right, what's up? What's up, man? All right, so my question is, why do you reject individualism when collectivism justifies tyranny over a minority for the good of the majority, which I would consider to be evil?
All right, well, it really depends. It really depends, so it depends on what the minority is doing. If minority is engaging in actions that are at the expense of the majority, then yeah, I think it's 100% justified because that minority's actions are at the cost of the majority. So yeah, this includes private enrichment, landlordism, rents, dividends, and all that good stuff. So, don't fuck with the group and the group won't fuck with you.
Okay. So Believe in America has a series of right-wing political pundits that he wants your individual, I don't know why he cares, but he wants to know your thoughts on Ben Shapiro, Rush Limbaugh, Alex Jones, and Steven Crowder. And you can pick out any of those people that you have an opinion on.
There's not really much to say. I don't really differentiate that much between them because they're all just grifters. They're people that make millions of dollars proselytizing a bunch of bullshit right-wing propaganda and perpetuating a bunch of things that are provably wrong. And otherwise, I don't hate them. I just think they're intellectually dishonest hacks. I mean, except Ben Shapiro. I do think he's ideologically committed. Alex Jones. Yeah. Alex Jones, he's just insane. But Steven Crowder, 100% grifter. Absolutely. I don't think he believes his own bullshit. But otherwise, they all just work to reproduce the ideological superstructures that maintain the system as is and, well, hold us back as a species.
Okay. So Kong Hakon 7 Wheatley. Let me see if I can find you in the chat. Kong, I don't see you. Otherwise, I would ask your question there. So Super Capitalist Silent asks, do you believe that human nature has to be changed in order to achieve communism? And if so, how do you think this can be done?
I don't I don't think human nature needs to be changed because human nature, what is human nature? All right. Is it human nature to throw a football across the field? Is it human nature to gamble a bunch of money away at a casino or to drink or to beat your wife? Like, how exactly do we define human nature?
Humans do all those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course they do. But the thing is that there's a reason why they do. Human beings are some of the most neuroplastic and adaptable animals on the planet. We are largely a product of our environments. And when I think of like human nature, if anything, communism is actually very in line with human nature because we're a social species. We're very much a group work together to meet a common goal type species because we spent the vast majority of the context of our lives or evolutionary existence, in fact, within the context of a stateless, classless, moneyless society without markets. Back in the days of the tribe, we didn't have anybody but each other. And that's who we have to rely on in order to survive. So I would say that human nature is more in line with my values than it is with bourgeois values.
Okay. And we talked about the ultimate end of the bourgeoisie at the end of the revolution a little bit earlier. This is a question that I think you've covered already. Fuck Doobie asks, "What's your opinion on forced labor?" But you already said you're not a big fan of it there.
Yeah, not really.
And then we got the thoughts on gun rights. Um, so his final question there is what let's break this down to what do you think the three most important factors in the downfall of the Soviet Union were? What were the mistakes that they made that could have been avoided?
Well, there's a number. Corruption, terrible leadership, and outside sabotage. Uh, Corruption that had festered largely during the Brezhnev era. Like, fun fact, Khrushchev actually brought back the death penalty. Actually, I'll loop those two in. Corruption and terrible leadership, but there's a third thing. But yeah, leadership was pretty bad near the end. Gorbachev was a wrecker. He basically sold his country out for Pizza Hut. America was working tirelessly since the start of the USSR to undermine it, with, of course, the exception of World War II. They were a nation that were a constant siege, that were constantly being embargoed and sabotaged at every turn. That certainly didn't help. But
That's been the history, the entire history of Russia is them
Yeah.
being consistently attacked. Like before,
Yeah.
before we even called it capitalism, they've always been under attack from
Yeah,
all
because
angles.
there's such a
Part of their
big
national philosophy.
Yeah, there's such a big country, and that's part of where the defensive expansionism comes in and the use of client states. But the last thing I would say is a lot of the economic issues that they had were caused by the deficiencies within their planning apparatus. So within the modern day, we have computers and information technology. They did not. They didn't even have barcodes. Like, and as you can see, like if you don't have stuff like barcodes or way to track your inventory or plan in real time, then you're going to have issues with shortages. You're going to have issues with stuff going missing, or you're going to have a much more difficult time keeping track and doing economic planning. But they didn't have access to, of course, computers and IT, which I believe within the modern context is very important for a planned economy. Like you almost can't plan an economy of scale without computers and IT. And
I personally wrote a book about this. It's called Hawks at the Diner. If anybody would like to check it out,
Oh, sure.
It is a book.
Hawks, what's it about?
Hawks at the Diner. It's a very short book about what I call machine socialism, and it's about using advanced AI to plan a modern economy. It's very short.
Oh, cool. I'll
Pages
check
right
it out.
up. People in the chat saying very good book right there. But it's a very interesting question, and I think a lot of the questions that we have about socialism are going to be answered in a concrete and definite way once we start to have strong AI. And like so, global warming skeptic says, "Oh God, here we go with this bullshit." I know, but it's fun.
Yeah,
anyhow.
I don't even.
Hold on, I got time for one more question for you, and then I have to go rail some broad.
Have fun with that.
So Fleety says, "Well, I'd like to." Fleety asks, "Are you religious, and what role do you think that religion has inside of a communist revolution? Given that every serious communist revolution thus far has attempted to dismantle any sort of religious, at least all the major ones have taken exception to any sort of power wielded by religion.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why that is because historically, I mean, this isn't even unique to socialist revolution. It's just revolutions period or reforms period. The church has always been on the side of reaction. You name a reform, you name an issue, you name a revolution, and I can point to you a clergy or a pope that's actively proselytizing and fighting against it. All right, it's not unique to socialism. So that's one of the reasons why they faced
They're always
hard.
conservative. Yeah.
Yeah, they're always right wing. They're always against progress. So, but with that being said, I'm personally not religious. I don't have a problem with religion. Within the context of socialism, I prefer a secular state and freedom of religion. People are free to worship and pray to any deities and believe in whatever they want. And just because it's just, I don't really see a reason to crack down. You're never going to be able to ban religion. Trust me, they tried. It didn't work. They ended up basically laxing rules on the churches down the line. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm an atheist. I believe in freedom of religion, and I want a secular state. That's all.
So we've got a few more ones that are popping up here. And at the end of this, I'd like to give you an opportunity to promote anything that you're working on or whatever here. Capitalism is Great is asking you for feet pics. So get on WikiFeet if you possibly can. So Nonstop Link is asking, who was your favorite and least favorite United States president?
I don't really have a favorite.
You have to pick one. You got to pick one.
That's really tough.
Out of 46 of them, yeah,
they all suck. That's so hard.
Pick the least bad one and the worst one. You can
That
start with the worst one if it's easy.
Okay.
Who was the worst?
The worst one. The worst one. That's so tough because I hate them all. There's I'm trying to remember his name, but he's like wildly incompetent. It wasn't Teddy Roosevelt. I believe it was
Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah, Coolidge. Yeah, it's like a tie between him and Hoover. Hoover was pretty shit too. Yeah. As for best,
Hoover sucked a mean dick, though. That's where we get that term.
yeah. As for best, that's so hard. I want to say FDR just because he actually did do some stuff that like helped alleviate people's suffering, but he did it to save capitalism, and he also hosed people by depleting all of the coffer supplies of gold. Like he just stole everyone's gold and put a bunch of Japanese in internment camps and basically circumvented a revolution. So I guess FDR, even though I hate him too for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, it seems I just from talking with you a little bit, I think you would have a hard time and just existing under any kind of significant authority right there. You're like an anti-authoritarian at your core, espousing a very authoritarian viewpoint. So it's hard to reconcile right there. So Fuck Doobie asked, thoughts on the Red Terror?
Justified.
Okay. Assad fan asks, thoughts on Chairman Gonzalo and the Shining Path in Peru?
Not a big fan of Gonzalo. There's taking care, there's war, and there's excess, and there's the death that comes from war and revolution. And then there's reveling in the slaughter of indigenous villagers. And I'm not really about dragging people out of their homes and having them hacked to death with machetes. With that being said, there is a lot of bullshit about the Shining Path that spread as well. But Lucan Tamara, not a good look for them.
And then last question, the state of Israel, good, bad, should it be allowed to exist or permanently disbanded?
No, it's a client state to the United States. It's our gateway to the West. It should be dismantled, and the country should be given really to both major ethnic groups that are within it. They should come together, compromise on a single party, on a single state, and they should just share the country between one another. That's my stance.
Okay. I want to thank you very much for participating in this AMA. Please take this opportunity here to promote anything that you're working on. You could link to your Discord, whatever you feel like there.
Sure. I'm actually going to generate a link right now. So I do have a Discord. It's DSPS/Leftyville. I'm going to go ahead and generate a link as soon as Discord stops being slow.
It may clap you if you paste it into the politics Discords. So I wouldn't do that there, but just DSPS/Leftyville.
Yeah, you can Alternatively, you can go to my channel and you can actually find My same name, fellow traveler, by the way. I've got about 1,500 subs, a little under 1,500, and I'm doing my campaign right now. I'm actually making a history series on a people's history of socialism. So if any of you guys are interested in learning about socialist history or learning more about socialist theory, or, you know, just learning more about the ideology in general, you are going to get a straightforward, intellectual, honest presentation from an actual socialist, because that's ultimately what my project is. It's an education project as well as entertainment. Let's have some fun on the way, you know?
Cool. And Anon says he'll be sending some cool pictures to your server. So I want to shout out to Anon right there. Thanks to
Wonderful.
everybody for participating and
Yeah.
For this Discord. Hey, thanks for taking the time to
Yeah.
sit down with us and so forth.
Oh,
I'm Load Ray
likewise.
Bio. Yeah. Similarly, you can find me at youtube.com/L0DE. We do a show every Friday night. And shout outs to the other chat right there. All right, let me get the hell out of here. And everybody, thank you for your questions. I had a great time.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and
Godspeed.
Yeah, Godspeed. Take it easy. All right. Well, that was fun. I'm gonna remove him from the chat. All right, cool. Well, that was a lot of fun. What did you guys think? Hey guys, I'm gonna go use the restroom. I gotta pee. I'll be right back. Voila, I'm back. Man, people don't understand that it's such a false dichotomy between individuality and collectivism. Like, yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with individual liberty. Like individuality and collectivist society are not like inherently mutually exclusive. The problem isn't individuality. It's people basically engaging in individualistic behavior at the expense of other people, at the expense of the group, you know? And that's like the main point that I wanted to drive across. I'm surprised I didn't face more resistance. That whole server was fucking right-wing as hell, dude. There were like, there are people out there, there were crypto fascists, a lot of conservatives, a lot of libertarians, a lot of right-wingers. But it's important that I do talks like that because it exposes these people to ideas that they're not familiar with. Let's be real. The reason why a lot of these people aren't comrades is largely because of a lack of exposure, I would say, more than anything else. It's a lack of exposure. So it's good that we have these talks and we have the discourse that people we disagree with, because there are a lot of assumptions and misconceptualizations about communism that I have resolved just by having that conversation. So yeah, no, I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. It was a good interview, good job, good show, based. Yeah, I won't be subbing to the lit mod. Yeah, Free Palestine. The issue is that you're going to face so much kickback. It's better to just organically let religion wither away as the state and all of the other spooks of society wither away within communism. Let it go away on its own and let people give that up willingly. It's not really something that we should be interfering in. Like, you can't get rid of religion or crush it like that. It just doesn't work, all right? Religion is something just through education and through teaching people science. It's something that is going to go away on its own organically. So I'm not in favor of state atheism for that reason. Agree to disagree, whatever. All right, we got 26 people here left. Yeah, don't worry, we won't be streaming much longer. I actually have a conversation that I was going to be having with Juch. His name is Juch 2007, I believe is his name. Yeah, I'm in contact with him, and we were going to have a talk, about Juch ideology. This stream, I'm going to ask him if he's here. Are you here? This stream was a pretty good stream. Honestly, it didn't go nearly as bad as I thought. There were a bunch of cringe reactions when the announcement was on the board that, oh, a right-winger is going to be hosted on this talk. But yeah, I'm going to be talking to Juch, and we're going to be talking about the DPRK. I want to learn more about North Korea. I'm not going to lie. I know a lot about the Soviet Union, but I don't really know that much about the DPRK. It's not really a subject I'm well educated on. But I do like me some Juch, and I do like me some DPRK. They are They have my blessing, for they are, for all intents and purposes, the last socialist country on earth right now. Honestly, I have no idea. Hey, dog. Hi there, doggy. Hi there, boy. Yeah, so I'm going to be uploading the next day of putting up signs. But with that being said, my dog, who loves me very much, needs love and attention. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Expect that up by tonight, and A People's History of Socialism is coming soon. You have my word. It is coming sooner than you think. But yeah, take it easy, guys. Have a nice rest of the day. Peace out.